My name is Jacob Friedman, and on April 14, 2017, my life changed forever. I was a respected rabbi in New York City, leading my congregation with unwavering faith in the Torah. Every day, I followed the same routine: morning prayers, scripture study, and guiding others in obedience to God's law. I believed salvation came through perfect adherence to the commandments, and that we were still waiting for the Messiah to come. That all changed the night I died. It was Friday evening, the start of Shabbat, and I was leading a service at our synagogue. Suddenly, I felt a tightness in my chest. My vision blurred, and the room started spinning. Before I could react, everything went black. I collapsed, hearing panicked voices around me, and then silence. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in the synagogue. I was somewhere else, a place of overwhelming light, unlike anything I had ever known. The light wasn't just brightness, it was alive. It surrounded me, filled me, held me, and I felt a presence so powerful that I couldn't move. Then, a voice spoke, a voice unlike any other I had ever heard. It was gentle yet commanding, filled with both authority and love. It knew me, it knew everything about me. Then it spoke my name. Jacob, do you know me? My entire body trembled at the sound, my heart racing in my chest. I tried to answer, but no words would come. Before I could respond, the voice spoke again, and its words shook me to my core. You speak of me, but you do not know me. A deep fear gripped me. Not fear of danger, but fear of realizing I had been wrong my entire life. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. But before I could react, something even more terrifying occurred. I was no longer standing in the light. Instead, I was watching my own life unfold before me. I saw myself leading my congregation, teaching, preaching, following the commandments. I saw the laws I had obeyed, the prayers I had spoken, the people I had guided. But then, I saw something else. The doubts I had buried, the moments when I questioned, the scriptures I had skipped over because they contradicted what I had been taught. And then suddenly he appeared, a figure of unimaginable radiance, standing at the center of everything I had ever known. He was unlike anything I had ever seen, and yet, somehow, I knew him. His eyes pierced through me, filled with both sorrow and love, as if he had been waiting for me to see him all along. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. My entire body trembled as he took a step toward me. Then he spoke again, and his words hit me like a thunderclap. I am the Messiah. In that moment, my heart shattered. Every belief I had ever held, every teaching I had ever given, collapsed in an instant. I had spent my whole life waiting for the Messiah, and I had rejected him. I staggered backward, my mind refusing to accept what I was seeing. No, this can't be, I whispered, my voice shaking. The Messiah was supposed to come in glory, to redeem Israel, not to stand before me with scars in his hands and feet. But he simply looked at me, his eyes filled with sorrow, yet overflowing with love. I wanted to argue, to say that I had been faithful, that I had followed the Torah with all my heart. But then he showed me the cross. I felt like the air had been ripped from my lungs. Images flooded my mind. Scriptures I had read countless times but had never understood. Isaiah 53 flashed before me. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. My whole body trembled. How had I missed this? How had I spent my life searching for the Messiah, teaching others to wait for him, while denying the one who had already come? My knees buckled, and I collapsed before him, my heart breaking with the weight of the truth. I tried to speak, to beg for forgiveness, but the words wouldn't come. I had devoted my entire life to God, believing I was following the truth. But now, standing in his presence, I realized I had been blind. And yet, he didn't reject me. He didn't condemn me. He had been waiting for me. Suddenly, the light around me grew brighter, consuming everything. I thought I was about to enter eternity, but then I gasped for air. I jerked awake, my chest heaving as I gasped for breath. Blinding hospital lights flickered above me, and the sound of hurried voices filled the room. My body felt weak, heavy, as if I had been gone for days. A doctor leaned over me, his voice filled with shock. "We lost you for several minutes, but you're back." My heart pounded as I tried to process what had happened. But all I could think about was what I had just seen. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a hallucination. I had died, and I had met the Messiah. I turned my head and saw my wife, Sarah, sitting by my bedside, her face pale and streaked with tears. "Jacob, we thought you were gone," she whispered, gripping my hand. I could see relief in her eyes, but I also saw something else: fear. I wanted to tell her everything, to make her understand what I had just experienced. But how could I explain it? How could I tell her that everything we had believed was incomplete? My throat felt dry, and when I finally spoke, my voice was barely above a whisper. "I saw him, Sarah." Her expression changed instantly. She pulled back slightly, confusion flashing across her face. "Who?" she asked cautiously. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding as I spoke the words that would change everything. "The Messiah, Yeshua." Sarah's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. For a long moment, she just stared at me, her mind trying to process what I had just said. Then, as if suddenly realizing the weight of my words, she shook her head. "No, Jacob, no. That's not possible." I could see the fear in her eyes, the way she clutched her hands together as if trying to hold on to everything she had ever known. "Jacob, you must have been confused. You were unconscious. Maybe it was just a dream," but I shook my head. "No, Sarah, it wasn't a dream. It was real. More real than anything I've ever known." My voice trembled, but I spoke with absolute certainty. "I saw him, I heard him, and I know, without a doubt, that he is the one." She stood up suddenly, pacing across the room, her breathing shaky. "Do you even understand what you're saying?" she asked, her voice rising. "You're telling me that everything we've believed, everything we've built our lives on, is wrong?" Her words hit me hard because I knew exactly how she felt. Just hours ago, I would have said the same thing. I had spent my entire life teaching people to wait for the Messiah, and now I was standing here saying he had already come. I took a deep breath and said, "I'm telling you the truth, Sarah. Whether we accept it or not, he is the Messiah." She shook her head, tears spilling down her face. "No, Jacob, you don't just wake up one day and throw away everything. Do you know what this would mean? What people will say? What this will do to our family?" Her voice cracked, and I could see she wasn't just angry. She was afraid. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would all be okay, but I couldn't lie to her. I had already lost everything once. I wasn't going to lose the truth, too. Sarah wiped her tears away angrily, as if trying to erase the fear creeping into her heart. "You have to stop this, Jacob. Please, just forget about it." Her voice broke on the last word, and for the first time, I realized how much this was tearing her apart. She wasn't just afraid of what this meant for our faith. She was afraid of losing me. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away, stepping back as if I were a stranger. "I can't just forget, Sarah. I died. I stood before him. I saw his scars. I saw the cross." My voice cracked, my own emotions threatening to consume me. Everything we've been waiting for, it already happened, and I ignored it my entire life. My whole body felt heavy as the weight of my own words sank in. I spent years searching for the truth, and now that I've found it, I can't turn back. Sarah's breathing was unsteady, and for a moment, she looked at me like she wanted to believe me, like part of her knew I was telling the truth. But then, she closed her eyes and whispered, "I don't know if I can do this." With that, she turned and walked toward the door. I wanted to call out to her, to beg her to listen, but I couldn't. All I could do was watch as the woman I loved, the woman I had built a life with, walked away, unsure if she would ever come back. The door clicked shut, and I was left alone in the silence of that hospital room. My chest felt tight, not from the pain of my body recovering, but from the pain of watching my wife walk away. I had lost my congregation, my reputation, and now I was on the verge of losing the one person I loved most. I buried my face in my hands, my body shaking. "God, What do I do now? For the first time since my near-death experience, I felt completely alone. I had expected rejection from the synagogue, from my community. But I never thought Sarah would turn away from me too. My mind raced with doubt. Had I made a mistake? Had I misunderstood what I saw? Was this really worth losing everything? But as soon as those thoughts came, I remembered his voice. I remembered his eyes, filled with love and sorrow. I remembered his scars. I took a shaky breath and whispered, "No, I won't turn back. Even if I lost everything, even if I lost Sarah, I had to stand in the truth." I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I had met the Messiah, and nothing in this world could make me deny him. If my story has spoken to you, if you've ever doubted or wondered about the truth, I urge you, seek him. Open your heart. Ask the hard questions, because the truth is not something to fear. It is something that will set you free. If you want to hear more stories like mine, subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. God bless you.